does creative freedom work? And how can you develop a mindset that gives your imagination wings? And the real question behind that is there a principle or perspective that applies to both your creative life and your spiritual life so you find more freedom in both areas? That's what we're going to talk about right now. Welcome, I'm Joel Pelsu, President of Arts and Entertainment Ministries, and our passion is helping you as a creative professional to succeed in your creative life while growing deeper in your spiritual walk. Because your creativity and your spirituality are designed by God to work in concert with one another. That's our passion. If that's your passion, take a second, hit the like and subscribe button for our channel. Click that little bell so you get all our notifications. Oh, and there's something new for us on YouTube. If you love a video now, you can respond with a super thanks. You just hit the heart in the icon down below. It's a heart with a dollar sign right in the middle and the word thanks. Then you can pick any amount you want to donate. Here's the cool thing. Your comment then becomes unique color. They call it super thanks. It's highlighted, custom color, so you stand out when you make a comment on our channel. So if you love our content, I invite you to do that and see how this works out. It's brand new for us, so we'll see how this works. And of course, we have online courses for you about your calling as an artist, about theology, and a course called Catalyst, which teaches you about being an entrepreneur in the art world or entertainment industry. The links are all down below if you want to check those out. Now, one of the great artists, Igor Stravinsky, had a philosophy of creativity that's so helpful. It can be summed up in this one statement: there is no freedom without boundaries. Now, first heard about this back when I started studying jazz in college. And one of the classic illustrations for this was a psychological study where they took children and put them in two different yards, 20 or 30 children behind two separate houses. And they said, go play for half an hour. And they were observing them. The difference was one set of children had a fence around the yard and the other set of children did not. You'd think maybe the children without a fence would just explore as far as they could go. But in reality, it didn't work that way. The children with no fence stayed close to the house, but the children in the yard with a fence, they went all the way up to the yard. They're playing on the fence, toying with things on the fence. They're exploring every inch because they know the boundaries within which they have freedom. Now, too many artists in the last century have described freedom as being about not having restraints, freedom from restraints or boundaries, but it simply doesn't work. You see, a life without priorities and principles is a life of paralysis and anxiety, not freedom. In legal philosophy, political philosophy, they call it the anomic man, the man without laws. This person never leads to human flourishing to have this philosophy because it's built on selfishness. It's not considering a love for others, how to relate to your neighbors, how to have a healthy society. It is only about yourself. Because if we're going to be in a community, we have to have mutual restraint so we both flourish, we both thrive. That's one of the problems with that view. Now, as we consider the idea of freedom and creativity, I want us to see that there are two temptations we need to avoid in life, especially as Christians and as artists and creative individuals. The first temptation is legalism, which is a life focused on the laws, the rules, on obedience, and on, therefore, our performance within those rules. And such a life leads to two dangerous things, right? First is an obsession with playing it safe in order to earn God's favor. And that becomes works righteousness. If we just play it safe and stay inside the bounds and do what's right and behave perfectly, then God will love us. Well, then why do we need Jesus to die? First of all, we don't need grace. This is a failure to understand the gospel, and we'll never experience the freedom in our hearts we need to if we're living this model. You see, playing it safe kills creativity in your art and joy in your spiritual life. But the other option, instead of obsession with the rules, is a fear of breaking them, a fear of failure that's based in shame and guilt and approval of others, and a focus on avoiding sin rather than glorifying God. It's fear-based, not love-based, not based in the hope of the gospel. And this kills your creativity. You see, fear creates anxiety, whereas creativity thrives on joy and the freedom to play and make mistakes and try new things. Creativity requires grace. It requires these beautiful parts of life that performance and obsession with the law will never create. So for both these reasons, legalism is deadly to your spiritual life and your creativity. On the other hand, we have the idea of libertinism, which is the opposite of legalism. Libertinism is a rejection of any rules or restrictions. And if we look at it, there are really two basic expressions here of libertinism, like there were of legalism. First, an obsession with the self and your individual perspective. You see, anything that restricts you or holds you back is the problem. You need to break through all those boundaries, find freedom from all these restrictions, so you get freedom to do whatever you want, regardless of who else is going to be hurt or what else happens in society. Now, hopefully there's some limit. We do care a little bit about how it affects others, but what's driving it is this selfishness. And this doesn't produce great art because art is a form of communication. How can you communicate well to others when you stop caring about others? When you're encased in a tomb of selfishness, you feel free, but your kind of freedom is walking away from one of the essential things you need to enjoy in life, and that's relationships. The other expression of libertinism is driven by a fear or hatred of the rules. Hatred of traditions and customs, whatever is predictable. You find that all is problematic. And so you notice here what fear does. It captivates you and I. And in truth, it makes you captive to what you fear. So now you're driven by avoiding something. Avoiding tradition, avoiding the rules, avoiding the customs. You're not free because anytime you look like you're obeying the old rules, going back to embracing those traditions, your fear creeps right back in your heart and your mind, and you see this fear of tradition, this hatred of tradition, rather than freeing. Now we can use traditions now. Let's see what's helpful. But instead, they actually drive you out of what is comfortable and stable and forbid you from returning. See, if you made yourself into an outcast, an outsider, a reject from those things, and a loner, this leaves your heart in a terrible place. This pushes your heart always to be at odds with something in society, with your own family, your own tribe, your own traditions, your own political party, whatever it is. This is, you don't want to define yourself primarily by what you're not. That's not relational. There's no opportunity for love there. It's only pushing away and isolating, and leads to even dehumanizing others and then hatred and all those awful things that happen in society. This is a horrible model for freedom in your heart and in your creative process in your art. Your creativity should not be defined by resisting certain things in life. We should be free to explore. Are they valuable? Are they helpful for this story? Are they helpful for life? What is going to be valuable as we move forward? And as a Christian, in God's eyes, what is fruitful and God-honoring this process? That's what we're looking for, not what we're avoiding or afraid of or resisting, but what is God calling us forward to? Because He wants us to flourish, to find joy and health and life and peace and all these wonderful things. Now, I want to say an aside. As I was writing this, I thought, what if you're running from these things because of abuse or trauma? Something awful happened to you in a particular group that's associated with certain traditions and customs. I don't want to dismiss that, right? That pain is legitimate, and you probably need friends and family who can help walk with you through that trauma to find a healthy understanding and response and healing and a way forward, right? Find healthier traditions and customs and healthier community. I'm not saying just embrace rules and traditions because they're always good and proper. People in authority are still sinful, and so we need to be honest about that. So I just want to be clear on that as I talk about this. So if you've gone through trauma and abuse, I want to encourage you, get help. And out of love for you, I want to say, don't rush into any rash decisions, anything reactionary, and don't define yourself only by what you're against. That leads toward bitterness, resentment, and running away from things rather than facing things. You need meaning in your life and hope. That means finding something worth living for, not just defining what you're angry about and want to avoid. So if you're watching this channel, hopefully you are a Christian and you know there's a great source of hope in Christ and the gospel. And I just wanted to encourage you in that. All right, I just felt like I need to offer that sense of compassion here because people wrestling with these issues are coming out of a painful past. Now, let's see if we can come back to the main discussion. So we see both legalism and libertinism fail to lead us to true freedom. The obsession with rules and following rules, traditions, and old methods is a form of traditionalism or worshiping traditions. It leads to stagnation, not freedom. And the obsession with breaking boundaries, self-expression, avoiding cultural norms and customs is a form of worship of novelty, or what is new, the avant-garde. And it can become a fear of being stuck in the past. Now, for us as Christians, if we think about this, it should resonate deeply with us. Just think about the Ten Commandments, right? The 10 Commandments are freeing and produce a more joyful life full of less anxiety, guilt, and shame, and injustice, and so on. You think about a society where people are thriving is a society where we all agree not to steal, not to murder each other, not to cut each other off in traffic or lie to each other. It becomes actually obvious when we stop to think about it. These commandments are kind of boundaries, how we self-restrain ourselves so that we all have a more beautiful life. These are things we all agree to live by. But we must be careful. The laws are not the point. They're just boundaries and not the focal point. The focal point is love. This is why Jesus said the greatest commandment is not one of the 10 Commandments. The greatest commandment is to love God, and then love our neighbors. That is to be the driving force, and that gives us creativity as we honor God and stay within those boundaries or commandments. You see, the boundaries or the structure of these commandments are like a fence around a yard. So your kids can run around, your dogs can run and play free. It keeps loved ones safe and keeps out dangerous animals. So the wolves do not endanger your little ones and your loved ones. It's the same with creativity. Just as the frame we put on our work of art is not the focal point, it's there to serve the beauty of the photograph or the painting. And in music, especially jazz, the chord progression in the song is there to serve the melody. You see, in your life, you need structure and freedom. We need speed limits and stop signs, but freedom to choose the way we want to go to work or where we're going to stop, right? In our relationships, we need to trust that we will not be betrayed. That boundary, like in a marriage, in that space, we have freedom. We make commitments not to do certain things, so there's more freedom and safety. Now we can be vulnerable, open, and honest, which fosters a deeper sense of freedom and being known and love and hope, all these things, and creativity thrives in that context. Consider a writer. They have to choose the limitations, or you want to call them boundaries, whatever it is, the limitations of a genre, maybe then the limitations of a location of the novel, the time period, the perspective they're taking, which party are they looking at these events through. But contrary to stifling creativity, these limitations help channel your creativity. They foster creativity. They enable you to focus, to imagine those specific characters in that particular time period with those unique challenges. And then your imagination begins to light up as you explore what those characters would do or say in that specific moment. So, I hope you see here the Christian life has rules, but they're not the point. And they're there to give us a life that has more freedom and joy and hope, which in turn fuels our imagination and our creativity. We aren't weighed down by anxiety and shame or reactionary things or fear, and our creative life mirrors that spiritual life. In both cases, that structure creates the playground where our imagination and our spirit can find joy, immense creativity, and freedom to live a rich and full life. The freedom God wants you to experience is found in this third way, freedom within the boundaries. It's not focusing on the boundaries, it's not obsessing on the freedom, it's understanding how the two work together. It's dancing in the groove. It's painting as one who knows the rules and the materials and the techniques, and yet has freedom to find joy in the process. You know, for me, it is the love of jazz. I'm a jazz musician, and maybe I'll make another video about this and do some experiments playing music that demonstrate this. But in jazz, when you play a solo, you have great freedom to choose the notes you want and the type of melody or phrasing you desire. But you're not playing alone. You're still in a context of other members, the drums, the bass, the keys, and whoever else is playing. And that particular song, there's a song with its chord progressions. That is a kind of boundary. And the melody and the venue. Where are you playing, right? Great jazz musicians are pursuing that freedom, but if they know it's a conversation with other musicians while respecting the context, which is a kind of chosen boundary to respect. And all the great solos from Thelonious Monk to Miles Davis, John Coltrane, they're built on this view of creativity and freedom and boundaries. That's why they were so creative in doing new cutting-edge things, but it's not destroying boundaries. These great musicians bring us joy as we listen to them because there is such freedom and imagination and ingenuity, but they're always in a context of boundaries. They're not destroying boundaries. Maybe changing the boundaries. We're going to use this chord progression here. We're going to look for this kind of sound here, but they're new boundaries. They're never boundaryless. Boundaryless living and boundaryless art does not exist. That's the anomic man. That leads to paralysis. So these boundaries are really a gift. They give us the freedom within those boundaries to enjoy life and explore life in a relationship with God and with others. So there you have it. Freedom in your spiritual life and creative life is not found in breaking boundaries, but in finding the freedom within them. Recognize the limitations of your artistic medium, respecting the gifts and limitations of your colleagues, and it will go well with you in the creative process. Recognizing the limitations of your heart and soul, obeying the Ten Commandments, loving and respecting others, and it will go well with you in your spiritual life, which in turn leads to human flourishing. You see, the greatest sense of joy and creativity for the greatest number of people is anchored right here in these spiritual principles. And these apply to all of life. It's such a gift when we understand this. The light comes on, we realize where this freedom comes from. So there you have it. I hope this was helpful. I hope it was both encouraging and inspiring. I hope you enjoyed this. Check out our website and our online courses by clicking on the links down below in the description. And take a second, hit the like and subscribe buttons. And you can hit that super thanks if you want to donate money and just make a comment that stands out and get your own color, all those cool things. As always, I pray that God blesses you and equips you to be salt and light in a world that desperately needs it. Keep getting encouragement and teaching. Check out another one of our videos right here.